I think this is it. Is this the button? I think it is. Did that do the thing? Hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the live stream. This is C Sharp with CSharpFritz. And we're going to be talking about, we're going to have that discussion, that talk radio interaction to chat about all things C Sharp, just like we do every week. This week, we're going to continue our sessions, our series talking about various tools for .NET developers, focusing on the Microsoft-made tools. This is a Microsoft channel. And we're going to talk about Visual Studio Code today and get in and talk about some of the tips, some of the things that I've had good experience with, and maybe hear from you. Some of the extensions, some snippets, some things that have worked well from you out there. So that's the agenda for today. And of course, we start every episode with a bit of AMA. How you doing over there, chat room? Let me bring on the chat room. They're right over here. Hello, hello. I'm saying hello to our friends Eggsy over there on Twitch. Good to see you. Space Shot is here. Null Chefo. Hello, good to see you. Pranav, how's things going over there on YouTube? I see a bunch of folks out there. I think people are a little bit quiet here this morning. Steven, there you go. I'm doing well. I had a hard time sleeping last night for some reason. Not sure why. It's been one of those weeks. A lot going on and having a difficult time sleeping and getting things going here. How's it going? Imran is here from Malaysia. Welcome in. Let us know where are you watching from. So last time we met, fantastic. Good to see you, Pranav. So there's a lot to cover in this topic, and there's I picked and chose some things, a little bit of reinforcing some things that we saw previously, because a lot of what you can do in Visual Studio Code is the same as what you can do in Visual Studio. So I'm going to reinforce a little bit of that, and we're going to go deeper on some other things that are a bit more interesting that are available not just with Visual Studio Code, but other places you can find Visual Studio Code as well. How you doing there, Sachin in India? Roro, welcome in from Korea. You're multitasking, says Eric. You know what? I find a number of folks like to do that. They like to turn on the live stream in the background and have Fritz back there sounding like he's pair programming with you. And when a topic comes up, something that you're interested in, you can kind of pivot and jump in, drop something in the chat, and move on with things. It's a new day for VS Code developers with C Sharp. Yes. There are some new things happening with C Sharp in Visual Studio Code. It's absolutely getting significantly better in Visual Studio Code, and we're just at the beginning of this improvement journey, I'll say. Hello, Renee, is it Cagayan de Oro in the Philippines? Welcome. Busasil, how you doing there in South Africa? Welcome. It's good to see you. Umar is here from Pakistan. Hello, welcome in. So, Space Shot is hinting at the new features around C# Dev Kit. I've got my build shirt on today. So C# Dev Kit is a new tool that's available, new extension available for Visual Studio Code that Visual Studio users can get, install, and work with. Now, I say Visual Studio users because even if you have a license to Visual Studio Community Edition, you can work with C# Dev Kit inside Visual Studio Code. I don't have a shirt command. No. Pranav with the start of a questionnaire, looks like it might have hit enter too soon. Do you have any advice for experienced? I'm sure we'll catch up with the rest of that question there. Umar says VS Code is a modern way for developing apps nowadays. So let's make sure we draw lines between classes of tools. We have IDEs, integrated development environments, like Visual Studio 2022, that have everything soup to nuts available for you. Debugger, performance profiler, test tools, command shell access, designers, advanced code editors. There is a huge suite of developer tools that ship with Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code is a code editor. You get nothing with it to start. However, we can layer extensions on top of that that start to give those features and that experience that you do have in parts of Visual Studio. With C# Dev Kit, you get IntelliCode, you get the ability to interact with the Solution Explorer and manage files as a solution. You get the ability to build and run tests using the same test runner that's in full Visual Studio. So it is a modern way, to be sure, but it's also not the only way. There's many, many different tools out there. Yeah, Pranav is having a little bit of a problem with the enter key there. That's okay. Bruno says, hello from South Florida. Lorenzo from Argentina. So Pranav's question here. Do I have any advice for a .NET Core developer? What kind of advice are you looking for an experienced .NET Core developer? There's always something new happening. Take time like Friday afternoons and spend time tinkering and trying new things. There's a brilliant professor I had at university said to me, Jeff, there's one constant in this industry: change. Everything's going to constantly be changing. There's new versions of programming languages coming out, new versions of tools, frameworks, operating systems. Be ready for those changes. Take like half a day on Fridays. Book it as personal training time, reflection time, whatever you want to call it, to read a book, read some blog posts, tinker with your code, and try something new. If we as developers are always in our comfort zone, wow, I really enjoyed writing ASP.NET code and gosh, writing code with Razor. I wouldn't have explored and gotten into Blazor. I wouldn't have checked out AI things that I can add on to that. I wouldn't have started tinkering with .NET MAUI and building mobile apps and getting ready to build, focus on, and deliver my first mobile app, hopefully later this summer. Don't rest on what you currently know. Spend time thinking, exploring, and tinkering. I'm going to get some music going here in the playground, then I want to come to Eric's question there. I'm going to go with the Stream Beats Lo-Fi playlist today. This is music that's kind of groovy that we're going to have in the background here. Instrumental, and just fun to listen to fill in the blank spots. Big thanks to Harris Heller and his team of creators for putting this music together that we're listening to today. Eric with a question over on Twitch. Has there been any definitive date for when .NET 8 drops in November? The .NET Conf page hasn't been updated yet, so it has you wondering if there's going to be a virtual conference. We're working on that. I hope to have an announcement soon. That's all I can say at this point, Eric. It is something that is top of mind and I've been spending a lot of time on. We'll have more information very soon. I promise. Continuing here, let's see here. Hello, I said hello to Lorenzo in Argentina. NHB channel says this live stream is talk about what? Talk about all things for .NET developers. That's what we talk about here. Let's have a good time as developers discussing, enjoying those things that interest us. Hello to, is it Fawad in Egypt? Did I pronounce that right? Space Shot says it's really tough. There are tools in the Visual Studio IDE that go unused, and enterprises are paying good money for. He's correct. There needs to be more evangelism of those. Absolutely. The performance profiler tools in Visual Studio go very unnoticed and unused by folks. So, why is Rider slower at debugging? You're going to have to ask the Rider folks on that. They have a different debugger that they run that they built. I appreciate the Willy Wonka comment there, Eggsy. That quote. Emilio, how you doing there in Bolivia? Welcome. Space Shot continues. VS Code seems to have that lightweight feel that makes some developers, especially web developers, happier. You're right. But as you get into more complex projects, you need to start layering in more tools, and it gets a little unwieldy. So it's not cut and dry. Completely agree. Umer on YouTube says, I like the fact that it can be that Visual Studio Code can be very lightweight, and you can configure it how you want to. Totally agree. And that's something to be said, that there are groups of developers that really do enjoy I want to take ownership of my development experience. I want to control what features are added, what features are lit up, turn them on, turn them off with easy disable commands, add and remove features. And there's other things we can do in Visual Studio Code as well, thinking about things like dev containers, where, you know what, I don't even have to install tools to build and work with your code. I'm just going to point to a container that has all the tools installed for me and work inside there and keep my workstation clean of all that nonsense. I like this from Imran. Fritz's law, everything changes. I'll take that. Sure. Absolutely. Cecil is here from Jamaica. I hope you're doing well there. Your reggae boys there in Jamaica tied my American football team here in the CONCACAF Gold Cup this weekend. It's a tough group, this first group, and the keeper for the Jamaican football side is Andre Blake, who plays for my Philadelphia Union club. So, Cecil, I don't know about Jamaica this week. Hope you're having a great week. Let's see here. Mark says, based on Pranav's question, the more you learn, and hopefully the more you should earn. That's a great continuation of that, Mark. The more you learn, the more experience you have, the more marketable you are to advance your career. Don't just spend time learning about tech things. Also, learn about leadership, learn about management and project architecture styles, project and team management. Yeah, good points there, Mark. Umer likes the collection of hats. Thank you. I need to do something to get it a little more organized and publish some more of the hats that I have. You want to learn image processing with C#, says NHB channel. Is it okay? Yes. Check out, oh shoot, what's the name of the NuGet package? It's not Image Magic. Image Sharp is one that a lot of folks use. 50, almost 59 million downloads for Image Sharp. It's a very good image processing library that folks use with .NET. So I'll share a link to that NuGet package in chat. There you go. So you can follow up and yeah, there's a project website with documentation, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and they do request a commercial license to use Image Sharp. I'm not sure exactly where that licensing starts and stops. So, let me see here. Hello, IDNT. Hello to you in Spain, watching on Twitch. Good to see you. Eric is going to seriously look at Copilot to see if it can help you build Lego faster. Refactor. Yeah. Dalip says, we have Solution Explorer for Visual Studio Code. Is there any features have been added? The big features from C# Dev Kit are the Solution Explorer, the test runner, but they also brought the Roslyn compiler, the Roslyn IntelliCode, IntelliSense features. So where the version, and not all of that is in DevKit. Some of that is upgrades to OmniSharp that were made. So that, and we'll dig in and talk about that further. That means that your C# IntelliSense and syntax highlighting that we were getting in Visual Studio Code is much, much more improved. Faster, stable, and I believe they went to the LSP with that, the language server protocol, to ensure that things run a lot smoother. And we end up then with the same experience across Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio for Mac. Let me continue here. Paulo is here from Brazil. How you doing? Metal Jace from Cambridge. How you doing? Says, I enjoyed the Visual Studio stream last week. Will I be showing C# DevKit extension? And yes, just talked a little bit about that. Ook Peak Australia on Twitch says, can I recommend any code analysis extensions in VS Code? More advanced than Prettier. I don't use code analysis extensions. Prettier's nice to help with formatting, but I know there's a handful of them out there. I don't use them. I really don't. Sorry, I wish I had a little bit more input for you there. Eggsy commenting about dev containers, wish performance was better on Mac OS. A little bit of that is the ARM processor. And getting back and forth between that stuff. It is. Yeah. Null Chef asks, what do I think about native AOT? Am I excited about native AOT? I think there's some good places where it's going to be impressive and significantly help us. I think about some of the code that I wrote yesterday that is a service that I have running on a Raspberry Pi. If I could AOT compile and run that, here's code that does analysis of audio files. It would run much, much faster on that ARM64 processor on a Raspberry Pi instead of going through a little bit of JIT processing before it gets running on ARM. So that could definitely be faster. I don't see native AOT as a silver bullet, but I definitely see it as a nice way for native applications to start and run faster. For services that run on the web, microservices, I don't think we're going to see a significant performance improvement there. My big thing's going to be in the native apps, the client-side apps that we build. Let me see here. Do I recommend a beginner to learn vanilla JavaScript before learning React or Angular? Asks Imran. Or is basic JavaScript directly to framework? Learn the JavaScript basics. Learn the basics. There's a whole generation of folks that didn't learn the JavaScript basics, and they were jQuery developers. Do you remember this, friends? And they just learned jQuery because they didn't have to learn JavaScript. If you have some foundation of JavaScript, before you go in and start using Angular, React, Vue, Svelte, you're going to better appreciate how to stitch together pieces in those frameworks, or even how to migrate to the next framework when it comes along. Because while there's one constant in technology, it's change. There's one constant in JavaScript, and that's whatever framework you're using this year is going to be out of style next year or the year after, and everybody's going to want to use the next framework over that you haven't heard of yet. Svelte is becoming a bigger and bigger deal. Vue is a big deal. Angular doesn't carry as much weight. React is one that folks really lean into right now, but Svelte is coming on. We'll see. So, Roro has a question here. Is it feasible to incorporate WinForms, WPF, MAUI, or Blazor applications into a web page? I aspired to develop it in a manner akin to ActiveX or Smart Client. Blazor applications is where you want to go. You will see folks like Project Uno that enable you to write the same XAML that you wrote in WPF and deploy it as WebAssembly. They have frameworks with Project Uno that allow you to do that. I'm not a fan of that approach. Me personally, I think XAML was a creation because a group of folks did not like HTML, and quite frankly, there was a bit of a rebellion against that with Windows 8 that we saw, where not only could you deploy XAML-based applications for Windows 8, but they also had HTML-based applications you could build for Windows 8. I think if that technology had come along about 4 years prior, XAML wouldn't be a thing, because people would be building native applications with an interpreter that ran on top of HTML, not a browser, an interpreter and a compiler. ImageSharp did have a bit of a scuffle with the .NET Foundation. Yes, they did. So that's their business. That's how they want to run their project. I still think it's a fantastic library and recommend, if folks want to do professional, really high quality image manipulation with .NET, check out ImageSharp. So, hey Thindall, good to see you. TC Coder, hello. Oh my gosh, calling me teacher. That's very kind. Mark on YouTube says, personally, VS Code I think is pants, not as good. Is pants? Is pants. Okay. Compared to proper Visual Studio. I prefer full Visual Studio when I'm focused in delivering a bunch of code. However, when I'm on my Mac or my Linux laptop, I do prefer VS Code. Well, I mean, I don't have a choice, but I really enjoy using VS Code versus some other command line editor. How long till Visual Studio Code is bigger and better than proper old Visual Studio? We're seeing a bit of an experiment here with the C# Dev Kit. What is the uptake for that look like? What do folks think of that? Is there a licensing model there that works for everybody? I need to be careful what I say, because I am not making product announcement or statement. I believe that VS Code is a very capable tool that many people are using, and we know many people are using. What it delivers in the browser with GitHub Codespaces, with the ability to open and run in dev containers, is a very compelling experience, and is something that I'm watching with much, much interest. Being able to open a dev container and get the Python tools automatically installed for me, where I'm not a Python developer, and I can contribute and work on Python projects and keep the rest of my .NET development machine clean of those tools that I'm not familiar with, I might not want installed. It's a pretty nice experience. And then be able to open that same project in a Codespace and get the same features opened up, and it's running in the cloud in a browser. Well, now I can use my favorite tablet. Now I can use whatever machine I want. I can use my Raspberry Pi to write code on that. My Raspberry Pi 400 is now a full-featured development machine with Visual Studio running in the cloud with a Codespace. That's pretty nice. So let's see how things develop over the next few years. Zakaria on YouTube writes, what are the most used services in Azure that I should learn as a .NET developer? We were just talking about these in our last series. Check out App Service. It's your Swiss Army knife, do everything, do all application hosting platform. Install web applications, install logic apps out there that run and connect several different services. Build serverless function apps that can run and host and do background services for you. run Azure container apps on app service, where put a service, put some sort of a project inside of a container and have it start when needed, shut down completely when it's not needed. Make sure you check out Azure Service Bus and Event Grid. Those are two tools that will help manage throughput of messages between various connections and capabilities on Azure. Of course, Azure SQL. Choose your database that makes you happy. I enjoy using Azure SQL, but of course, you can install and run instances of MySQL, Postgres, Cosmos DB that has a whole bunch of different database architectures in there, including graph database, column-based database, and key value storage. There's MongoDB capabilities with Cosmos DB as well. So I think that puts a nice wrap around those. Check out the link to the GitHub repository. If you're watching on YouTube, you are. Check the link down below in the description for my GitHub. GitHub.com, CSharpFritz, C# with CSharpFritz. Check out Season 7. There's a list of episodes in there where I go through and talk about various Azure features and with links to various tools and documentation you can use. Yeah, prettier isn't code analysis. I agree, Chris. It's not. Roro on YouTube says, I wish configuring the startup project and setting the build order were more convenient. Setting the build order, well, in .NET, it's pretty easy to do in full Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code, it kind of walks you through. Let me know. Sonarlint is available for VS Code. Okay. I don't work with it. Eric comments, would be nice if the analyzers would generate unit test coverage. There are other tools that are available, unit test tools that you can run in Visual Studio Code that will give you test coverage, highlighting, and code coverage metrics. I forget the names of the tools that I used to use. It's been a few years since I've used them. Anybody have some comments for Eric about extensions that give you unit test code coverage in VS Code? Because I forget the ones that I was using. VS Code is a very rich and extensible editor. That's right. And Visual Studio is a full integrated development environment that you can add extensions to. You're welcome, TC Coder. Yeah. So the database issues that I had a few days ago. Docker performance and dev container performance is not great on Intel-based Macs either. I can't speak towards where that issue is. The two machines that I primarily use it with, my Linux laptop, my Windows machine, runs great. jQuery is not JavaScript, that's right. How you doing there, Bradfield in Cape Town? Good to see you. Welcome. Let me see. You knew JavaScript before jQuery, and that was painful. Thanks, Netscape. jQuery was the great equalizer, the great facade in front of all the different APIs that the various browsers had, so that we could be sure we had the same capabilities in front of all the browsers and let jQuery figure out which features we should use. The browsers have pretty well aligned on capabilities, so the things that jQuery does aren't as valuable anymore. So, ActiveX is dead. WPF was Silverlight. ActiveX is certainly dead. WPF was Silverlight. Yeah, they had the same roots. They did. And folks were still using Silverlight up to about this time last year. Deleep has WPF, WinForms, UWP, and now the new WinUI 3. My doubt is whether just using WinUI 3 we can build apps, or do we need one of them like WPF? So WinUI 3 is the next evolution of UWP, right? WinForms and WPF are managed by the .NET team. UWP and WinUI 3 are managed by the Windows team. I don't have full insight into why they're creating so many significantly different frameworks for building applications. And from your comment, confusing developers is what I'm perceiving there. I think they've got some work to do to get their ducks in a line there and make it a more cohesive experience for folks, for developers. You like that you can just go to vscode.dev? Yes. Right. Wait, vscode.dev? Am I thinking? No, I think you're thinking of github.dev. No. Yeah, vscode. Okay. There's a couple of these out there. Yeah, vscode.dev just opens Visual Studio Code in the browser. You can go to github.dev is what I was thinking for any page, and I have that in my notes for today. And it for any code file, and it will open Visual Studio Code and show you that file. We'll show you that a little bit. There is Visual Studio for Mac, yes. So, and the team for Visual Studio for Mac has definitely had some challenges. We absolutely see. No, it didn't. We absolutely see VS Code get a lot more attention from developers than VS for Mac. Continuing here, your first editor was Sidekick, then multi-edit. That was the DOS era of computing. That was some time ago, Renee. My goodness. I'm not sure. Chris says not sure if VS Code will become bigger than Visual Studio. Well, define bigger. Will it become more used? It already is. Will it become more valuable? Licensing purchase models will drive some of that, and we'll see. The C# Dev Kit is a first step. It's the first one where Microsoft is requiring a license to use extensions that we provide for Visual Studio Code. It is very early in the development of DevKit. It's been out for less than a month. We'll see how it evolves. We'll see how it changes. There's lots of opportunity to provide feedback. Things will break in DevKit, to be sure. It is very early in its development cycle, and as you've seen from the teams at Microsoft, we want to get you involved sooner than later for things that we're making available open source, and for some things that we aren't, and give you the opportunity to opt in and try new things, or stay on a firm release track and use those features that are fully released and fully supported. So we give you options of how much, not just risk, but how much of new features you want to try before they're fully baked. Yes, Visual Studio Code is, I'm told it's the world's most used code editor. I don't have numbers I can point to that confirm that, but when you see television shows and they open up a code editor and it's Visual Studio Code, when you see folks from NASA, the North American Space Administration giving lectures and they're using Visual Studio Code, it really says something about the popularity and usability of the editor and how much folks really enjoy that experience. And I know there's folks out there that prefer Vim and Emacs over VS Code. That's okay. If that makes you happy, if you feel more productive using those tools, go for it. There's a whole other class of people that are more productive and happier using a text editor like VSCode, and yet another class of developers that enjoy a full IDE experience like Visual Studio or JetBrains Rider or gosh, Eclipse, NetBeans. I'm showing my age here, reciting some of the Java IDEs. So that's definitely a thing. Imran asking a question here, an update from yesterday. How is ClipTalk on the Raspberry Pis? Is it running smooth? The Pis are here behind me. I'm going to open an editor here, and let me see if I can shush in real quick. Stand by. Yeah. And I will be able to tell you. I didn't set up any kind of Grafana or monitoring tool so that I can see what's going on over there. But still running over there. Looking good. It's transcribing some code right now. And if I run my Docker logs, yeah, it's so for folks that don't follow my other stream, we compiled an open AI large language model for transcribing audio. Compiled it for ARM64 using CSharp.NET tools in Visual Studio, put it into a Docker container, and deployed it to a Raspberry Pi. It's running slower than it was on my AMD processor here with 24 cores and whatnot. 24 cores? 12 cores. I think it's 12 hyper-threaded. 12 with 2 threads, something like that. Come on now. All right, show me my CPU. That's GPU. Yeah, 12 core processor with 24 threads. So runs a little bit slower than that. That's okay. I've got plenty of Raspberry Pis where that came from. Bigger or more popular? Yes, it's more popular right now. Will it replace Visual Studio? Different folks prefer different tools. Continuing here. Roberto on YouTube asks, GitHub Codespaces and dev containers today. Yes, we are going to talk a little bit about those. Absolutely. Vikas comments, Visual Source Safe. Oh, you're getting me. You're getting me from back in the day when Skippy in the next office over had code checked out with an exclusive lock, and sorry, you can't work on it because Skippy left for the weekend. You're not allowed to make modifications. Oh, well, I guess we're not working on that. Tell the boss we're not shipping updates. Chris asks, can you set the specific build order? Why? With .NET, you have dependencies that kind of force the build order. You can have build scripts that you run if you have things you want to build beforehand, but even then, add them as build tasks inside your CSproj file, and when those projects hit, they'll run in the proper order. Build order for .NET isn't too important a thing. For other languages, it absolutely is, but for .NET, it kind of forces the scenario for you. Hammer asks, what's a good way to use Copilot? Carefully. I'm not quite sure what you're looking for. What do you mean by a good way to use Copilot? I mean, yeah, I'm on the web there. I tricked myself and was looking at the web version. Yeah, what are you looking for as far as what's a good way to use it? I mean, it comes up and extend and suggests features. So yeah, what are you looking for? Help me out there. So let me make sure. Yeah, I didn't have Copilot Chat installed. And yeah. There it is. That's what I was looking for. So, yeah. So, I don't see the chat window though popping up. I don't think I. There it is. That's wrong one. All right, continuing here, and I need to wrap up the Q&A, the AMA here for a little, and get into the content. Yeah. So, what do you mean by what's a good way to use Copilot? I let it suggest and complete lines of code for me. I'll put in comments. Hey, generate a loop that goes and does something here, and it will give me a selection of different code formats to do that. Help me out there. What are you looking for? Sulfur on Twitch asks, are there still interesting C# dev certificates from Microsoft available, or did all of them pretty much fade out? We hear this question a lot. It's something that I know there are teams discussing, researching. I don't have anything to announce or to share progress or status-wise on that. I know there are folks interested in that, and I can tell you there are folks that are evaluating what we can do, what we should do regarding certifications on C#. Evan on Twitch says, been having issues getting Codespaces working for Blazor WebAssembly. It insists it needs an extension to debug, but that extension can't be installed in the Codespace development. So I don't debug WebAssembly with Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. I use the browser to do that. I only debug the server-side stuff. So if I need to debug and walk through my WebAssembly stuff, I open and do it in the browser. It's Blazor. It runs in the browser, and I use the debugger in the browser. Easy for me to say. So, yeah, that's it. That's the way that I go after it. And I mean, it's the same way if you were running with a little bit of JavaScript in the browser, I would debug it in the browser. Crypto Boomer on YouTube asks, what's the difference between a class, a record, a struct, and a struct record? That's a good intro question, and I'm going to stop with the questions that came in at 9:40 here. I know we're a bit late, but I want to make sure I get your questions answered. So class record, struct, and struct record. Those are 4 keywords that allow you to define objects in C#. Classes and records are what we call reference types. When you create those, create an instance of those that allocates memory on the heap. There's 2 memory constructs in .NET, the heap and the stack. The heap is a heap of memory that content is written onto, and a garbage collector comes through occasionally and reclaims those unused elements. So you can potentially run into issues where the garbage collector misbehaves or takes a little bit longer cleaning up things from the heap, and your memory usage can balloon and then deflate as things are allocated and deallocated. So class and record are reference types. Struct and struct record are value types. Those go on the stack. As soon as they go out of scope, the method that was referenced that we're using those variables, the other objects that we're referencing those structs and struct records get released, get deallocated. Those are removed from memory immediately. So there's a performance benefit to the memory management of how you use those two different types of objects. If you have memory types, if you have types that use a lot of primitives, integers, booleans, floating numbers, characters, not strings, characters, working with structs is going to give you amazing performance. So, Junior on YouTube asks, what's a good upgrade for jQuery to go for? Vanilla JavaScript. A lot of what jQuery does is just available in JavaScript now. But then you're going to want to look at frameworks that enable you to do that stuff faster, which then will lead you to the decision between the three most popular right now, Angular, React, and Vue. How you doing there, Napalm and PC Nerd? Hello. Timmy the Termite says, I still have clients using Silverlight. Conversion dev work is very profitable. Folks back in 1999 were saying that about COBOL and Fortran running on the mainframe as well. Converting from no longer supported technologies is always profitable for contractors. Oh, yes. Contractors and consultants. You migrated to Angular since jQuery says Hammer 88. Yeah. Imran asks, is PHP dying? Have to ask the PHP folks. I don't manage that technology. Hey, Caesar Squires saying, good morning, still beginning their journey with learning C#. Can I clarify the real value of interfaces? The real value of interfaces is the ability to swap out implementations in your code. Good example of where I do that, and you'll see me do on the other streams that I host where I work on a project called Clip Talk. I've used interfaces to swap out implementations for searching for data. So you want to search for clips from Twitch or videos. Well, originally I was just running through the list of titles that were sitting in a table. I replaced that. I wrote another implementation of that and used the exact same interface in my front end application to access the exact same methods, but they were implemented to go search using Azure Cognitive Search. I upgraded further and moved that capability into RavenDB, a NoSQL database that is built with amazing indexing and search capabilities. And I wrote another implementation, swapped that in. My front-end user interface still used the same method calls on the interface, but instead went to Raven for data. Now I've swapped that out and I now use Elasticsearch. Same implemented methods, but pointing to Elasticsearch as the provider. So the ability to swap out providers for things like that, very, very valuable. As I do logging locally in my development experience, works great. I can swap that out for something like Application Insights when I deploy to Azure and have it now go to an architecture or location where it's optimized for searching through it, mining, and working with very large logging data. I keep saying the word Grafana, and I don't have a lot of experience with Grafana, but I understand that's another place folks like to swap in logger implementations as well. And I need to spend some time learning that. VS Code's Vim mode is so good too. Eggsy, I'll take your word on that. I've seen other folks say, "Oh, I don't like that at all." Whatever, that's fine. Running legacy systems just so they can keep using Silverlight. Oof, I'm sorry. Dilip says, I don't see much companies creating desktop apps. Is it demotivating? They're all focused on websites as it is available on all platforms. Back when I was building internal applications for pharmaceutical companies in 2004, 2005, we had moved to that model where we don't want to manage applications on folks' desktops. We don't want to set up an app store, some location where we need to synchronize content on fleets of hundreds, thousands of desktops. Just point to the web application and run it over there. I agree with you. However, on the other side of that, if you need to work with sensors and other things that are on that PC, that phone, that laptop, you need a native application. Yep, ARM64. That's what I'm running on the Raspberry Pis. Silly me, on an ARM64 processor, installed a 32-bit operating system originally. Oops. Things didn't work too well. Is it time to pony up for Copilot as a cost of being a developer, asks Napalm. Try it. There's a 30-day free trial. Try it for a few weeks. See what you think. I'm impressed with it. I of course, I work with the product, so I get to use it for free. Full disclosure. If I was not working for Microsoft, I would consider it part of my annual developer tools expenses and pay for the annual contract. So if it and I see folks, Eggsy and Evan, saying it pays for itself. The amount of time you'll save in the code that it generates is worth it. Hammer says, how to make prompts. Look at a console application with C#. Yes, Eric, talking about architecture here. Interfaces make your dependencies on object behavior versus one specific type of object. It's about decoupling. So you decouple your objects that you're creating. This is an object-oriented thing, and there's other folks that write more functional code that will disagree, and they have a different way to build things. But in object-oriented programming, the interfaces decouple your implementations from the behavior that you're seeking out. The interfaces, I like how you describe that. Describe the behavior of what you're looking for. We can then use tools like dependency injection and service locators to grab those facilities that we need, those concrete implementations, and work with those, and you can swap those out then with configuration. You haven't done desktop app for more than 20 years. All right. We are well over time. No more service locator? What problem do you have with service locators there, Timmy? Timmy the termite. Let me know. What are you seeing there? We're going to talk a little bit about Visual Studio Code today. I've got some tips written up here, and you know what? I'm realizing I completely forgot to put in tips about the terminal inside VS Code and notebooks. Oh my gosh. I'm going to put a section here. And I'll make sure that I add some content for that. Let's head over the code, my code, that we're going to be working with today is available in the C# with CSharpFritz repository on my GitHub. And we're going to be looking at Season 8 and Session 0802. I'm going to be on a feature branch to show this because I haven't merged it yet, and I don't merge these usually until after I'm done presenting. So we'll talk about that. Jupyter Notebooks are in Visual Studio Code too. We built Jupyter Notebooks, and that was kind of the foundation of this entire show that we've been running. we'll take a look at it. Breaks the D in solid, the dependency inversion principle. Tell me more. How does it break it? I believe it enables it. Help me out. This is a good architecture discussion. Help me out. NeoGetta says, I'm having to work on a WinForms app at the moment. It's more painful than you remember. How's it painful? I think that we can bring our patterns into Windows Forms development that we use, MVVM, MVC, service locator capabilities. And we can build our applications in a way that takes advantage of patterns that we've learned in web development, so that building the user interface and using the designer becomes a joy. So let me know. Let's talk about that. Philip wishes there was a button that would turn the terminal into an open file-like tab. Open file-like tab. What do you mean? Give me some more, Philip. Give me a little more context on that. That sounds possible. Do you want the terminal full screen? Is that what you're saying? You'd like it to be the entire the entire screen? Let me know. I think there's a way to do that. SL obfuscates where service locator obfuscates where dependencies come from. While service locator does have its benefits, for the most part disables proper DI. So I'm going to agree to disagree, because I don't care where the dependency comes from. As the developer that's building a user interface, I don't care where it came from. That's somebody else's responsibility. If it is mine, I can drill down to it with Control F12 in Visual Studio. I know where it came from, and there are hotkeys and tools that will help me get to the implementation. So you're not entirely wrong, but I want those front-end interfaces to be dumb and not know about those things. You can stretch the size of the terminal to the full height of the UI. Let's dig in here. Let's head over to Visual Studio Code, talk about some of these things, and as questions come up and whatnot, we'll get into this. We can talk more about it, to be sure. So let me head over to. I don't have the full set up today. I'm actually setting up. I was hoping to do some fun streams in the evenings, and I just haven't gotten there. But let me head over to this user interface. There we go. So this is 0802 Visual Studio Code tips and tricks, and some of this is going to be the same as we saw last time, and some of it's going to be different. And we're going to talk more, and I'll definitely add notes as folks have suggestions here in chat to update and talk more about some of the things that we can do here. Philip on Twitch says, when you open multiple files, you can drag one to the right and the screen is split. I would like that for terminal. Let me talk about that in just a minute, because there's more we can do there. So Visual Studio Code, one of the most popular code editors in the world, has been receiving regular updates monthly. There are monthly releases that you can get. Not just you can get, you will get. It forces an update every time you open Visual Studio Code. But it's been around now since 2015, 8 years. We've had this editor available. There is a nice article on Wikipedia about the history of it. There is an insider's version available as well that you can download and use if you want to use the latest, greatest version. That may include breaking changes, that may include things that break extensions. It's there to test and work with. There's a nightly version that you can get your hands on also. There also is source code available over here on GitHub that you can get to, and I have a nice link to the source code right there. So this is GitHub Microsoft / vscode, and all of the source code for this is available. There are folks that do download, clone, remove features that Microsoft has added here. Notably, Visual Studio Code does come with some features that do telemetry, so that we know when Visual Studio Code breaks. Hey, how can we address that? Let's get a stack dump. Let's read and improve the tool. And there are some folks that really don't like that. That's okay. You can download distributions from some of those folks that have recompiled and removed those capabilities. That's part of making source code available, is folks go through and they disagree with how we maintain the project and they want to maintain it themselves. You're entirely welcome to do that. You're welcome to take any part of this, of Visual Studio Code, and use it. It is licensed to you under MIT. So you do have to give credit and put the MIT license in whatever parts that you do reuse. So you can take the text editor in Visual Studio Code and put it into your own application if you want. You have that freedom. It's allowed and, quite frankly, encouraged. So check it out. There's all kinds of things that you can do with the source code to this. So also available in binary form, of course, at codevisualstudio.com. There's all kinds of versions available here for Mac, Windows, Linux, and Debian and RPM distributions. But you can also get this off of APT. There's a handful of other places that Snap you can get it installed from as well. So I believe it's in Brew. You can do a Brew install and get it for your Mac. If there's some place that you can install applications for your system, you can get it from. We've taken steps to make sure you can get it from those locations. So it's everywhere you want to write code. Let me catch up with chat. Renee, you're so reliant on Visual Studio to be able to build your apps in the correct order. This comes automatic in Visual Studio. How can you do this in VS Code? It uses the exact same build tools in VS Code as Visual Studio. So the command line will do that for you. And yeah, same thing with if you run build in Visual Studio Code, it runs the exact same command at the command line. Unit tests stumble and get complicated when you have to deal with service locators instead of dealing with dependency injection in a more transparent process, like constructor injection. Okay. I'm going to agree to disagree. Because I just don't run into that issue. What do I think about best salad course on Udemy? I don't recommend Udemy because we have our own set of courses here on learn.microsoft.com. Yeah, Space Shot, that you can kind of force the order, but it's the exact same tool when you .NET build, and it should build in the proper order at that point. So I'm not sure what you're I'm not understanding what it is that the problem that you're having, that you can't just .NET build at the command line and have it work. Like, why doesn't that work for you? Did I try C# Dev Kit for VS Code? I have it running here. We'll take a look and write some code today to be sure. All right. So, all right. So that's where you get VS Code and where you can get it. Yes, Codium is the other thing folks have built and work with, so that you can get a Visual Studio Code instance where they've taken away all of the metric collection and reporting. And that's fine if there's decisions made that don't go in a direction that supports the way you use it. Your voice hasn't been heard then. Like, you can't log and report errors to Microsoft if you've removed those features. Kind of. So. Let me see. Evan was in Atlanta. Yeah, take a look at the things that are on learn.microsoft.com and check out our YouTube, youtube.com/.net. A lot of what you're looking for is already there, written by us, the .NET team. Yeah. Okay. So we mentioned, right? What was it? vscode.dev. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Yeah. We'll open Visual Studio Code in the browser, because here's the thing. Visual Studio Code is a browser. This, right? Running Visual Studio Code here is a browser. And there are ways, and I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. There are ways to get underneath and peek just underneath the browser that you're editing and typing in here, and look at the code behind it. There we go. Inside the editor, I can do Control-U and I can get into how it's rendering. But if you go to browse to vscode.dev, it will open an instance of Visual Studio in your browser, and you can just start writing code here if you'd like. What to do with it from here? I can save and download content from there, but you're working in a browser and you don't necessarily have access to things on your current machine. If you're over in GitHub, so if I go over to my GitHub, right? Hey, I know that guy. And if you go into, let me see, if we go into a project that's out here, I can open one of these files. So let's go into this ASP.NET Core project. And I can go into here and let's open a Razor page here. I'll open this by just pressing the period key. And this opens github.dev and gives me that file inside of an editor here. Now it's downloading information about the repository, so I have the whole shoot and match here available to me. This is not Codespaces. This is just an editor that's looking at your GitHub. But I have the ability to save and download and bring content in from VS Code running in the browser here. If I want to make changes and work with those files in a way that I compile and interact with them, I can continue working in Codespaces. What's Codespaces? Codespaces is a machine that's running out on GitHub's cloud instance. Sure, just give me the small one. And they will start up an instance of of a container with tools necessary to run your project, and you can start interacting with it and have it compile and run in your browser. So if you have a very large project, or you have folks that are working on a tablet, working on lower end machines, I mentioned a Raspberry Pi, that type of commodity hardware, you can be developing and working out here inside your project. Where'd it go? Pages, index. Yeah, go ahead. And now I'm in here working with this code live in my browser, and nothing's installed locally. And you can see where it's running down here on the bottom left. This is running in Codespaces. It can run in a whole bunch of other locations. I can download and open it in Visual Studio Code here locally. I can download and create a clone of the Git repository to work locally. Hey, install Visual Studio Code if you don't already have it. But when you are running a container, a code space on GitHub, you are allocated a certain amount of time that you can run, processor time, that you're allowed to run completely free. If you're not interacting with it, it will shut itself off. And of course, if you go too long, if you're using too many resources, there is a fee associated. So, lots of choices for how you run this. The other thing that was in here that I do want to make sure I point out is you can add what we call a dev container. And what this will do is give you all the things necessary, the tools to build and work with your project and run either in the cloud like this in Codespaces, or like I mentioned earlier, run locally. And I don't have any of those tools installed on my machine. They're sitting in a container and quietly running in the background on my machine. So flexibility in where you want your code to run, where you want to edit, and of course, save all of your content back to GitHub, right? If I do a file save here, right? H2, adding this as part of a live stream, and I try to save that. Well, where did it go? It's saved locally here inside the container. It's not on GitHub. It's modified here inside my container. Okay, I can see it there. I can also see inside this tab over here shows me the changes in source control. In order for it to persist beyond the life of this container that's running in the cloud, I have to add and commit it to source control. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tear this down and stop using. Yeah, close the folder. Thank you. It's going to reset up the code space. I want to go back to my repository. Yeah, there we go. So a list of the code spaces that I have. There's the one that I have running. And I can shut that down and delete it here. So stopped and delete it. So there's a bunch of different images you can download and you can run. And also work locally and let the processors in the cloud take some of the build pressure off of you. So that's the nickel tour of different places that you can run Visual Studio Code in the cloud. If you don't want to run it locally, or you don't have the processor power to run locally. Andrew let me catch up with chat. Andrew with a question. Any ideas on coding or some library to increment a string with numbers and letters? No, I don't off the top of my head. Sorry. It is literally Chromium. F12 is actually hidden from you. Yeah, I can't get F12 to pop open. Let me see here. Yeah, from a security lockdown laptop, dev tools might not work there, but you can continue working by pushing your code over and opening in Codespaces or dev boxes, the new offering that we're putting together where if you need more than just a code editor, you have all of that available with a dev box. So that's, you're going to see more about dev box in the next few months leading up to Microsoft Ignite. Eric asks, do I envision Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio ever allowing you to use code by talking to the app like the browser microphone icon can do on browsers now? There are folks that have extensions for that. And there are people that do dictate code. Chat with a random user? No. But there is... I thought there was a dictation. Voice code. Let's voice code control Visual Studio Code. So there's that available. Right, and of course, I've already been tinkering it down here with the terminal. Right, I can always do Windows H. The terminal can be opened by pressing Control plus backtick. And I get pretty good dictation. Right, it's Control backtick, right? Yeah. So really I want it like this. I think, is it 3 to get that formatting the way I want it? Yeah. How do I escape the backtick? No. Do I need one more? See, now I want to... That's weird. There's a formatting trick there with Markdown that I need to do, but... So... continuing. Trying to use Codespaces to utilize the iPad. Take a look at, well, not take a look at. Do you have a external keyboard? That's the best way that I've found to use it. I have a Bluetooth keyboard that I use with my phone, and I've had success with that. James Foreman, I think I missed the first half of your question there, James, because I just see and how to use it. Is it Oakleus on Twitch? Does Copilot work well with obfuscated source code? If it does, you could say it truly understands the underlying programming language. Well, does any editor work with obfuscated source code? Like, use code with that? Ah, there we go. Thank you. I forgot about the code tags. Appreciate it, Nicholas. Thank you. How you doing there, Kazaniko? Welcome. There we go. There's James. Can I review settings JSON and how it works in a C# project? I haven't spent time with settings JSON. So, I mean, Visual Studio Code, settings, JSON. the user and workspace settings. Is that what you're talking about? Which, I mean, I can talk briefly about that. And that kind of fits in with some of the first things that I say to do here. Code writing tips are pretty much the same as we did for Visual Studio. They all work the exact same way. But Control P, Command P on your Mac is going to get you into file searching. So all the files that I have open from this folder, Control Alt P, Command Control P, I think it is, on a Mac will get you into the command palette here. User settings is where you're going to find your various settings that you may want available and configure for yourself. Things like when folks want you to change your font. Who would do that? Who would do that and want you to change your font into something that's potentially hideous? Oh, it didn't work. Nope. I prefer to use Cascadia Mono. That's the font that you see me using here. But you'll see other folks with different fonts that they prefer. Is it a way to configure the VS Code environment? Yes, it is. Yep. Settings JSON. These are settings files. Settings information. So if I open user settings as a JSON file, and you can see this is located inside my home folder, settings JSON. I could copy this out and put it in other places so that it can reload and make that same feature my preferences, my font preferences, my tabs versus spaces preferences. I don't think it's just off the bottom of the screen there, but if I move this up, you can see I prefer tabs, and I prefer 2 space wide tabs, and I can configure how I want that. And 2 space wide tabs means that Python folks hate me. I kid. F# folks. No. I like tabs. What can I tell you? So this you can save. There is a workspace settings as a JSON file, and it's sitting in the .vscode folder. So if there's something you want to configure as a shared configuration option that everybody that works with VS Code on the project team should get as an override, you put it in here and it will apply those updates. But honestly, while you can write content into those settings files directly, I really like working with the editor. The user interface editor here is really, really good. So I didn't know there were audio cues. So yeah, breadcrumbs. Do you want those available? These things right here. So can I demo building a DLL with dependencies? Check out the other videos in this playlist. I've done that lots of times earlier in the playlist. Fira code you like with the ligatures. So I do have, I turn off ligatures when I'm coding here on stream because it confuses people when they see some of those pop up. Hey, Rodrigo. I am live on Twitch. I'm on the Visual Studio channel. Yep. Can you pin tabs in VS Code? I believe. Thought you could. There it is, pin. So now when I open some of my other files, right? They open next to them. And if I grab the wrong screen, I ought to shrink it down. It's pinned there in the front. So, I thought there was a control or something you could click there, but pin, Control K, Control K, Shift Enter will pop that open. And lock it in place there for you. Yep, search bar and the command palette. Can the command palette be tricky? Well, what do you mean by tricky? And yes, I have a pet, a Visual Studio bot that just hangs out here. But what else? Let's get some .NET code running here, and we can tinker a little bit more. So I'm gonna jump over to let's go to dev .NET new. Let's write a console application. Test console app. All right. So I'll go into that folder. I like to go into folders and then type code. So it opens vscode right in that folder for me, and it has my folder set up here for that project. Now, here it comes. I'm going to sign into Copilot. It's opened GitHub over here in another screen. Yes, you are allowed to send stuff back over here. Yes. I did. I did. I know. You're not going to make this easy for me, are you? No. Fine. So my folder opens here by default for this C# project, and of course I get syntax highlighting, and we can create classes here. So previously we created a class to do a calculator. No. Create a class for a simple calculator. Thank you. VS Code. Copilot did that. Move that type over, and now I have calculator. I want to make sure you can see my hotkeys. Is Karnak running? Make sure that's running. So it generated all this code for a very simple calculator. So use the calculator to add two numbers. Sure. Yep. Sure. And it's going to write that result. I can run that in the terminal. Control backtick, it opens the terminal. Folks were asking about different things you could do with the terminal. We'll get there in just a second. I have it configured to use PowerShell, but you can choose and have it use different shells. There's ways to configure that. There's various shells that I have installed. You can configure settings here, but I'm going to just .NET run here. And I get my hello world, 20 plus 30, and the result that it calculated. Okay, big deal. Let's generate some unit tests for that. I'm going to go over to GitHub Copilot Chat. Generate unit tests for the calculator class. Let it think. So, Copilot Chat, unlike OpenAI, and ChatGPT, doesn't know the context of your entire project, your entire solution. This does. And what are you doing there, buddy? There's a command that I can execute to run this directly called tests. So if I go over here to calculator, I can fold this. And I believe it's the same keys to fold. Control M, M. No, it's not. Good thing I didn't include that. There's the tests. Here's an example of how you can generate unit tests for the calculator class. Fantastic. Somebody was asking about, can you put that into another, into a project with dependencies? Let's do a little bit of that. So I'm going to create a folder called source. And let's put all of this into source. I can move them around here inside my editor. And I will put right next to source. I'll create a folder called tests. Move that up to the top level, if you don't mind. Thank you. And let's create and put a project in the test folder. .NET new. Show me a list of the templates that I have here. I want an in-unit test project. There you go. .NET new. You can't. Can you see it? No, I'm off the bottom. .NET new in-unit. I'll put that in the tests, and we'll call this test.test console app. Sure. And there it is in the test folder. Okay. It even generated a global using, so I'm using the in-unit framework. There's a default unit test. I don't care about that. I can right-click delete, and I'm working in this file explorer here. This comes by default with VS Code. Let me go back over to the chat. And I'm going to copy this code and add a new file. And let's call this test calculator. There we go. Paste that content in. I don't need the extra using statement up top. Namespace would be nice. You know what I mean? Test.test console app. Oh, come on. Thank you. What? Tab. And it didn't complete it. Okay. Those are the right syntax. Let's test it. Yep, doesn't. I need to add a reference. So, right, I can do .NET. I'm hiding off the bottom here. I could do .NET add reference here, or I could use a little bit of C# dev kit. And by default, you see it's put in some of the folders that we already have here inside my solution. So my solution has, yes, you don't know what that is now. So let's remove this and let's re-add the projects. I don't want a new project. No, add existing project. There we go. And I have the same features that I had in Visual Studio. This is something that is specific to folks using and working with DevKit that have the full license. So there's my tests, there's my source, and inside this project, I want to add a reference. I can't do it here. Yeah. It's gonna let me right click on dependencies? No. That's okay. .NET add project, right? And I'm gonna go to source. Yeah, I think that's it. Reference, not project. There we go. So now my test calculator, there, now it knows what it's got. So I could run .NET test, and it'll restore and run my tests. And that's not bad. It runs it here in the editor, and it's in the console, and that's how I'm used to seeing it. But there's now integrated testing with DevKit that you can run here live in the browser. Not the browser, in VS Code. And I feel good about that. I can set them up to, well, run all of them, refresh them, debug them, and show the output window. And I believe... No, they don't have it in here yet. So, I can, of course, set up in .NET Watch. That's fine as well. So, I do want you to see I have multiple terminals open over here on the side of the screen. Okay. So this one is completed, and it has some warnings in it. I can click the trash can and delete it, so I can add more terminals here if I want, and I can split them if I want to be able to see multiples. Okay. I don't think there's a split vertical. No. But I can move terminal into editor area. And now I have the full terminal at the full screen size. So that was a question somebody had earlier. Gosh, can I do that? It's already there. So, nice to have. Let me see. Catching up with chat. Is this chat available for Visual Studio as well? Yes. The chat over here. Yep. Right. And there's even helpful hints to, hey, how do you run unit tests in Visual Studio Code? And it will look that up and tell you exactly how to run those tests. Very cool. Okay. I can also, of course, come over here and highlight code and ask for it. Well, explain what this is doing. And based on the code that I've highlighted, it'll do the analysis and give you a little bit of text to go with that. So that is a Copilot issue, but it is available. Copilot feature, it is available in VS Code for you. No, it didn't. And I thought it was using a global usings file. Right? It's right there. Global using in unit framework. Should not have needed it. Yeah, I picked it up. I think where I had the file residing, it wasn't fully discovering and running everything in the browser. So you can't say it's off the bottom. Bring that up. See the little C#? If you click that, you can see what language mode it's in. But there is also... I don't see it here anymore. Yeah, it's now the... there used to be a little OmniSharp icon in here that lets you know, hey, it's... which projects that it was detected, hooked up to, and providing capabilities for. So... there is code outlining. You can see a timeline of activity working with this file. It's kind of like a built-in source tracking, so you can keep track of your changes. But the Solution Explorer is the big thing, as well as the unit testing, or the big things that came in with DevKit. Code completion and code suggestions that are provided coming off of this, and the IntelliSense that comes with that, the stars to show you here are the most common used methods that we think you will want to use in this location. Those are all features from DevKit, but if you don't have DevKit turned on, it's under extensions. If I disable this, come on, right? And if I turn this off, well, it disabled it with it. The regular C# extension is still available, is still running. And this gives you refactoring, code navigation, code completion, and Roslyn-powered semantic awareness. This is built on top of, it is an improvement on OmniSharp. Okay? So if I, let me close and reopen that. Open a new version. Jump right back into the console app. So if I go to DevKit and show you it's not running, all right? It's disabled. Yes, go away. And I still go back into my sidebar over here, my workspace. I don't have Solution Explorer, but I do have the ability to see all the files in location on my project. I can still get type ahead code completion, but I don't get those IntelliCode suggestions where it's saying, oh, based on the syntax, here's a star to indicate we think you might want to run one of these things. But it still does the code completion, okay? That suggestion is coming out of GitHub Copilot. So that's still out there. Pink Floyd asks, do you know if OmniSharp language server will support XAML and CSHTML when run for another editor? It does support CSHTML. It doesn't support, I don't think it supports Razor. We're going to be looking at running OmniSharp with Vim next week. Actually, next week is right after. Well, we should be able to. It's July 5th. We should be able to. I need to look at what's happening. But we will talk about OmniSharp with Vim next week. Yeah. For non-markup languages, it works fantastic. The markup languages gets a little dicey. So, creating an HTML helper, how can I loop over a model expression property? Drop me a message on Discord, and we can put some code together for that. That's not hard to do. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, where are we? Got about 12 minutes more to talk here. So, I've shown some of the basic code things. Of course, Control plus zooms, Control minus zooms out. The mouse navigation buttons will navigate you between files. Okay, so I'm using forward and back buttons to navigate between files. There are, I want to make sure I cover. Debugging works fantastic from inside here, so let's go over to our calc program. Let's put a breakpoint here, and run and debug with .NET 5 and later. I'm choosing the project, and it generates this launch JSON file that has all the information necessary. So now I can click, is it? There it goes. So it's starting to run, and it will hit my breakpoints. And I've got locals, I've got watch, I've got a call stack here, and I can mouse around and I can inspect and tell it to watch various things. Watch the result value, even though I already have it in locals here. I can add, right, If I really want to do something stupid, I can add date time now as something to watch. So all kinds of things you can do here, and of course walk through the call stack and see how things operate as well, right? F11 steps in just like it did previously. I can walk up the call stack using the call stack window over here and see where the call came from that got me to this point. All right. It does have the full line numbers and stuff there if you want to see that, but it's just easier to click it and jump right through. So Shift F11 will continue and step out of what you're currently looking at, right? F10 will step over, right? Stepped over, didn't it? No, it didn't. So, but all the controls are right here. Step over, yeah, it should have stepped over that. So, finish debugging, and all that's hiding here under the little debug panel over here on the side. I do like what they've done for debugging in Visual Studio Code. I don't use it as much as I should, but it's there. What's the Discord server? Head over to my channel on Twitch, and there's a Discord button there. Conditional breakpoints. Edit breakpoint, and yes, you can have it conditionally stop. There are also, I believe, we can. No. Come on now. There is a peak where it will show you, not just. Oh, come on. Where is it? Peak definition, Alt F12. That's what I'm thinking. And it will show you, pop open this little dialogue, and you'll be able to explore and see, well, where did that come from, and get a little bit of context. And if you want to go through and actually work on it, double click and it'll open and take you right to that location in that other file. So I've used that a lot and just completely forgotten that I had the hotkeys wired up to do that. So the peak is, it's a handy feature that would be nice to have in full Visual Studio. Launch debug with hot reload. Hot reload is not available as part of VS Code. However, you can run with .NET Watch. And run that at the command line. But right, if so, yeah, close that terminal. Give me a new terminal. So if I run .NET Watch here, do that again. So it ran the application and it says hello world there at the bottom, right? If I come through and change some of these values, right? So if I change that to 50, save, recognizes the update, and reruns. This is a console app, so it's not hanging out there watching for updates. So let me think. So .NET Watch is, in my opinion, a lot more useful when you're working with web applications. So the debug does not run with .NET Watch inside of a web application. Nah, stay in source. No, all right, I was fine. .NET new. What's the one I want with Razor pages? Just web app. All right. .NET new web app. I'll just call this web. I'm not sure where this error is coming from, but so there's my web app. From here, I can .NET Watch. I don't have the debugger attached, but I can do then my live interactions and edits that feel really good to do from within VS Code. So I'll shrink down the screen here, go to my index page. I'll leave the terminal visible down there. Right. This is my live stream. And there it is, updated. Text, decoration, underline. And it's nice to also have the autosave wired up, because I stop coding, it saves and automatically updates the browser as well. Check out, yeah, my live stream below, sure. Oh, come on, I wanted to pop open the chat window there. Generate a hyperlink for CSharpFritz's Twitch channel. And insert that right there. There it is. I thought I had the hotkey down for that. What is the hotkey to start chatting in the middle of Visual Studio Code? I don't have to ask it code questions. There's no default hotkey to start chatting. Primarily code editor does not have built-in chat. Blah, 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 blah. I thought there was a hotkey for Copilot. Go get that. This one. I thought there was. Come here, show me that. Chat view. I thought there was a way to open it in the middle of. Yeah, right there. Control I for the inline chat. Oh, darn it. That's the one we wanted. Ah, there it is. Make this font bold on a purple background with white text. So, becomes a heck of a lot easier to write code now. Cool. Yeah, Acid Necro, I'll catch up with you on that later. How can I get a feature like suggestions, code formatting for PowerShell script in Visual Studio? In Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code? Is there a chat Copilot for VS Community? Yes, Rob. We saw that last week. And yeah, that absolutely works. And it's Alt / to get the chat to appear inside there as well. Right. So I could, right, do Control I and ask it, wrap this with a box and make the background color a light yellow. I could do that. Or I can highlight this whole thing and it's, I believe, Control Shift. It's not Control Shift W. I did it. That's the second time that I've done that. And that just feels bad. No, Open another Visual Studio. Yes, I know. We did this. No, open the recent folder. That's still not it. What the heck? Open recent. This one. So I am running insider builds. You have to run an insider build when you install the DevKit. Is it Control Alt W? What's this? There's a surround with. Not surround with snippet. No. There was a surround with in Visual Studio that I'm probably confusing and thinking it should be here. Should you go through the modules of C#? Sure, why not? Yep. But surround this with a block with 5 pixels padding and a background that is light yellow. And I can review and accept that. And because I killed the app, it doesn't start right away. There it is. Add a 2 pixel dashed border. And really I should do that with add a 2 pixel dash border. Looks good. So, the Emmet keyword, is it? Other things I want to make sure that I cover and that you see. We've tinkered with Copilot here a little bit. We talked about the debugger. I showed you a little bit of running inside of a Docker container, terminal. There are tons of themes out there. There's a great website that the community's put together called vscodethemes.com that shows you previews of various themes that are available that you can download and install. Theming for VS Code is very easy to do. Ooh, that looks cool. Sure. Give me that one. Yep. And that's pretty cool. Umbra. Ah, there we go. I like the purple. That's nice and smooth. So customize it and make it yours. There's also a bunch of snippets that you can use that are available for C# developers, automatically part of the project. So if you choose insert snippet, it'll show you the default ones that are available. Some of these kind of make sense. You've already seen and worked with some of these. So like I can add a property just by typing prop and it gives me a get set property. There's you can easily create your own snippets in this configure user snippets. Sure, give me a C# JSON and I can add my own definition. There's syntax, very simple syntax here that you can use to configure. It's JSON format for how to configure and write these so you can make coding a little bit easier, a little bit more fun to do. Sure, make that available. Save that. So now if I go back to here and I type log, it has that print to console like I suggested, and now it prompts me what do you want to log. Now that's a JavaScript syntax that I added into the C# JSON. So right, this should be console dot write line. So $1 is the label where you want to write to. So these should probably be escaped. So now if I do that again, log, and now I've got my console write line all formatted for me. It doesn't know what console is. Oh, no, I'm unreachable code. Alt up and down works here also. So I left that in the notes from last time that I copied over. So, all right, we are well over on time. My apologies. But let me wrap things up here. I got carried away with some of the Copilot stuff. It's just fun to go through and look at and work with that. So let me head back over here. There we go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Pleasure having you here. We went through, we talked a little bit about various Visual Studio Code features. We looked at a bunch of extensions. We spent some time with Copilot. I showed you what you get with C# Dev Kit, what you don't get with it. Check it out, install it. As community members, you can use Visual Studio C# Dev Kit in the community license at home, at school, on your open source projects. It's when you're a large company that we ask you to buy a license for Visual Studio, and then when you have a license for Visual Studio, you can use it with VS Code. So basically, everybody gets it for free, no matter what. Okay. We just ask you to, like I said, if you're a company that should have a Visual Studio license, you should have a license to use it with VS Code. Is there Control-D to duplicate lines of code in VS Code? No, that doesn't work. I think there is a way to wire that up though, and I just haven't hit it. Will the stream be deleted after ending? No, this will of course be available over on YouTube afterwards, just like all the other streams on the Visual Studio channel. Head on over to youtube.com/.net and you can replay the entire stream. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. It's been a pleasure writing some code with you this morning. For those of you that are on YouTube and watching over there, there's links to the rest of the playlist and other content over here and right over there. Check those out. There's some great content there that I think you'd be interested in learning more about. If you're on Twitch, let's set up for a raid. Let's connect and take a look at somebody else that's having some fun writing code on Twitch. Let me get you connected with our friend Lana Lux, who's building and working on her game Strain that she's been building with Unity, writing C# and building all kinds of objects and models to operate inside of this game. So I'm going to take you over to see our friend Lana. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow on my Twitch channel, where we'll be building more with Raspberry Pi, setting up and doing some cool stuff with Blazor and Microsoft Azure. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. I wish you good health and good coding. Take care. Yeah, that's the right button. I got it. Here we go.